So, in Revelation chapter 2 this morning, we'll look at the church of Thyatira. And I want to explain some things. This is a difficult thing. There's some things here that are difficult to understand.
Ni atanam pe medama ite tedilati amadu niego he atanana masra o me hi shoplog sa peda me mete ale so ba ponama ite ashire eto go sana mula chama ite pe singire eto go.
And I have struggled with trying to find the best way to explain what Jesus is teaching here.
Ni ona srana ona tene me ko heda ale so pe ngina ma me mete de biasa jukri na si cho pe te si so pe te no ha de srangi na mai cho shishire pe de pe upload pe ngina mai cho mi isa jemu te na utne la.
Because remember, this is the message of Yeshua that we are studying.
Me te ma be to ma ko heda pe pa ko na ke ma de biasa jukri ai so pe kripusi ko ne tana.
Now the thing that is a little confusing is this.
De pele swa pe so chere to esena plope pingi to mai te ne ma.
Yeshua gives a message to each of these churches in this area of Asia Minor.
Like verbally or through letters?
Right here in chapter 2 and 3. He is giving a message to Johann to give to these churches, to each one of these churches.
Okay. Da be me da tadilati amadu ni na mai cho pe ko he da bia se shikri na ma ai cho ma arachali asu cho na mate de ku yo ha ko me te he ne ma asino cha su cha to lo na da ma sroku au so so na te me na ko.
And Yeshua has said in the first chapter that he is going to show things that are happening now and things that will happen in the future.
Ni da liba ku na mama bia se shikri ara to lo de ko he na ba da re tadilati amadu re man madu ta na ma ai cho pe na bia se shikri na ma ai cho sroku na mai cho na order bi si kabina kuna kina ma ve show lok plisi tu mana chan no pa ma ato themate krapate ne ma ve show pa si pa.
And so we need to remember that as we study these churches.
Mina ona bebe to ma ko heda ba bia se jikri rana ma ai show ma ite sroku si na ma show mate krate ne be to mali ne ko.
So he has a message for each church saying the good things they are doing and also the bad things they are doing.
Ni da asucha chi ba ku na ma basic create be shin na da stroku na ma a he pa shu ma da stroku at the pit me at to are na ma mai te krate to ne da at the su si na ma te krate na basic create show I be shu logo.
But Yeshua is also revealing other things to us.
Number ara li ku na ma ai show pa sana da pe kripu pe pa ke na ma basic create na ma I so che ka pa ka pe te chu ko.
Because after 2,000 years, we are able to look back through history and see something very important.
Me mete ne ma da ya se shikri asu ha leader stroku sin ma au da na ku na ya na ko se na go ha ma na ku ne at to ku ne at na thon ne se le ma pe kin pe pa ka se da ya se shikri ra ta na ma pe singi la pu ko sa na pe ha unge dangi bi nya ba te be ko ha o da na thon ne se le ba te be pe pa ka kya se no upload ke pe ngi ko.
Because Yeshua has chosen these churches to be a picture of what all of the church, of what many of the churches have been doing down through church history.
Mete ne ma da ya se screen ha a su cha leader stroku so so na te me te he ne ma asi to me pe ko he da ba na ku te ya ku na ma da si be me da ma stroku da efisu me te ne ma esi efisu sroku te me ne ma kin ne singi lo a re kya si ne ma bi esi o chulu a o sha ke ba na ke si ne ma sroku lo lo pli ma si singi lo sana da pe me Thyatira ko si ma sro ko te me ne ma pe me ka kya se lu ne ma pe singi ko he da pe pha ku na ma ai sho pe sro ku te me ri kya ba mana da ite ai pe singi chelo pli da sro ku o sho ke ba kin ma a se re na da sro ku Thyatira te me go.
In the time of Johann, the churches like Ephesus were well taught, though their love for Yeshua was getting a little cold.
Me te ne ma sana ro la te me au pa da na ku te ya ku na ma da te esi sro ku da Ephesus sro ku no go he da esi sro ku la place ni ma sana esi pa chon ne li si ai so chon ne ma mana da a be cha na da ite a be cha na da a me mo ne bia se chu kri na ma sana lu la pe lu nge go sana a ji cho cho ni ne na bia se chu tu tu.
So the church at Ephesus was a picture of what the churches looked like during that time period.
Me na da o na pe me pe singi va te sro ku Ephesus sro ku te me go he mana pe singi va te esi re kya va te be ko pe singi na da ite ang abishek na da sro ku si da ro si ko asana ite da sro ku ba sha ke ba na ku te ya ku na ma da sro ku da lo please na ma de li sa ku sin ma pha chwa ani da chwa ba ma na da esi be che na da ite aku chobe ta na chomre ami mu be che kri na ma alu lap lu ngi ko.
The church of Smyrna was under terrible persecution.
Do bi hangen na ku te ya tu da to ya ta san ni no ha da esi sro ku be che kri ra ta da li ku na mai chu pe na da sro ku Smyrna ku no go he da ube me sa en ne kri pusina bana asha ke bana ke.
And that was a picture of what was happening in the next part of church history.
Ni da ona pe phamen literally se ku na mai shu tu pe da sro ku Smyrna ku wa mana ite pe singi go he da ba asha ke na ku te ya tu da to ya sanni na ma sro ku lo please na ma kha be se na da ite sro ku Smyrna ku no go esi kripusi na ma ke mi salu.
Because in the next part of church history there was terrible persecution and the killing of believers by the Roman Empire.
Me te na ma pe singi go he bi hangi akina ha da ona kelo kena ma da kripusi na ma ke si ke yu sin si mi salu mana nya shon ha ona Rome klapusi Rome thake kuna pa ka go he si Rome na ma asi theler ma da kripusi de ga.
The church in Pergamos was beginning to be friendly with the world and the world's immorality.
To bada sumet me da de bia shi kre cho pe da sro ku ma au da Pergamos ko he ba na ku ma au to ya san ni tu da nga ya ko se ko ba a sure ke na ma esi kripusi esi sro ku si na ma ko ba sa asana I be shi na da hi ku ba ko he me na esi na ma la kram me lo ga ki esi da ro si ku che be su si be a me te su si be esi la kram me lo ga me thar lo ga da hi ku si te ko.
That is a picture, that church is a picture of what was happening in this next part of church history.
Me na da una pe singi tu da Pergamos sro ko de kya ba ko he mana da pe singi na da bana sha ke bana kin ma sro ku sin ma la kram se na da a me se de na da Pergamos ko.
Because in this next part of church history, instead of terrible persecution by the Roman Empire, now the church was becoming a friend of the Roman Empire. Or I should say this. Let me put it this way. Something amazing happened here, because now the Roman Empire was becoming friendly with the Christian churches.
Ni da me kya se da bin na ko he da sro ku na me da Smyrna ku ne ma bana ke ne ma Rome thake ku na ma si misa no in kripusi be me tha he na ba na ku ne ke es yo da Pergamos a sure ke ba to ya san ni da nga ko sa ke na ma da Rome thake ku na ma misa pa ma kripusi to ba na ke na ma esi me ko be so na da kripusi ga.
Christianity actually became the official religion of the Roman Empire.
Mena hada esi rome thake kuno ha esi akte kucha ben ma da ma kripusi re kya ko esi no krami ke na da ma ite biase ju kripusi the ga.
And as we said last week, the persecution stopped, but now, because the churches were being merged with the Roman Empire, now great corruption began in those churches.
Mina da esinge ba shake ba na kinema da kripusi na lishin of to gosana da rome clubusi ki yesinema asi misa puluto nanda asi misa puluto wa mana da esi kripusi thopnena rome clubusi na akobe so akelu no go he mite akobe so akelu si da srokusi ne ma rome clubusi na palo loplike asena a portugalu asena siplo athwa ka plomu tumu no go bana kina esi te susi lopli no athe du athe epu.
In this period we saw the rise of the powerful Catholic Church.
Mena ba asia ke ba kenama ona be method esi ma Catholic ma puki srokusi esi tu sathe ko ma Catholic srokusi.
The Catholic Church has always desired to share power with governments.
Meteda esi Catholic srokusi nama esi si nama si method nama da esi ko ba swa na da esi tamda sra dusi te hin ko.
You see, as Yeshua has looked down on churches through church history, he has taken note of what is happening.
Ni ona biase jukri amemekle da asrokusi adeke te hin ko ha o ke pat hin ma asana da biase jukri ona meme ona asana aratama ko heda esi srokusi buna kinama esi kabinokrete esi tenemimete klote no.
The church we want to study this morning is this next church, the Church of Thyatira.
Me ba na pesi me da sroku ase pat me lumit me na go heda mina Thyatira ko na ba asho kenama oda nga ya ko se tirida the thong nga ya na saku.
Would you play, this is chapter 2, would you play verse 18?
Ma tedele tia madu nye amapu shitio. Oui.
Rachel yenede Thyatira presite plomo tenepu auna aheva phunu ra ahena deri te kya yenema ahyade chomria phuku au amese plonu akyar thosya chona minu akadune at the court case, not the Libya. No to play the shit and the job.
So, Yeshua, in his letter to this church, he describes himself, he describes his eyes of fire and his feet that look like they are metal burning in a furnace.
Anida yasana peninda na ko heda biase jukri asu he aratali ai be shuna da ma Thyatira na ma ai sholo na da ai sho exhibition na da biase jukri anni na ma mute na klote na ko heda biase jukri bis plon ma sana me ududu to na ken ma he thirum nu.
This is a reminder. Jesus is reminding them that he is also the Lord of justice, and he will bring punishment when it is needed.
Namu ma ken ma ahmete. When you hold on the debate, you've seen it all. Asana li the ke da me mete biase jukri na isho ma esisraku da biase jukri ni ma asana mete ne ma mete ne ma asi isho ne asi ko he mete ke ne asi te sudu o asi ni da to ne ma da biase jukri ma ve achire asi pa ai no ko da mete biase jukri ma da u pre chire as ki yesi ko he asi te su ne ma chire te su to ne ma be me chito.
In the church of Thyatira, some bad things were happening, very bad things.
Mete manda esisraku da Thyatira ke asho kenama သူရှုမဟုတ်တာတဲ့တော်ကစီနာတော့တဲ့နေကော
There was a woman who had much influence in that church.
နေတာ assistra ကူတမင်တာ Thyatira ကူနကိုဟဲဒါ assistra ကူတမင်မှာ promote the prayer and မှာစနာအမီဒုကောစနာကီအဟိတဲ့ချစီနေမှာကရစင်ဒါဂလို့တေ
And she was leading people in that church into great immorality.
နဘာဒါ promote prayer မှာအိုင်ဆောကီရစီဒါစရကူနမှာအိုင်ဆောတကရဟူဒမှာဒါite asana ate ke ko no te hitu mu lo singa sem huda immorality ma sana upama na ma sana te ma pona me o ma tu lu lo sin ko sana huda abe amat khet tu lo sin ko be me cho tu cho ko
And Yeshua has a name for her.
Vada primo amui na ma mo pe ne ma be se shukri shope.
Would you play verse 20?
Yes. Hold on, I want to look up if we have the word immorality.
Oh, okay.
It's IMMO, right?
I am.
Okay. Immoral, we have one. Ahinama. Nani? Pamit. Ntara. What? Oh yes. It's a literal translation. Ma kunena pemeni dada ma promoma ai swaki yemigla arika amigla. Kuna pemeni dada tedele tamaru nie ma punyishi.
Manaro Validia Tesuda Nelunuma out the church. Mighty hero Neplu Isuisa Premo Chichabilla de Ahilia Nidia Nina Vama Chomre Apre Prutopre Nutopre Aisuisa Akuaki Asuchus Lovakia Premite Putehi The Akuchus Premo Preku Turo Akui say Sauda Ulucha Tuhana Prezo Nutehi Wow you
Yeshua is calling her the name Jezebel. I don't know what it sounds like.
Yeah, same thing. Jezebel.
Now, that's not her real name.
Oh.
It's the name of a wicked woman in the Old Testament.
Nida u a eluna biasish krina ma a promote prima a illumina de Jezebel mom Jezebel la ko hemana ni nena ma promote prina muima mon Jezebel la mato mite biasish kri a elu mite mite ne ma de lisa as laguna ma de promote preda a mite susi enenia enema mini ne ma mom Jezebel la ko.
In the Old Testament, there was a Jewish king who took a wife from another country.
You said this was a Old Testament, right?
Yes.
Okay. The Lisa laguna ma actual casape the bishanada ami mimete mom Jezebel go he. The Lisa lago kin ha qui the pray qui pay the pray and ha I think a pia a promo go he na pia promo ma order takira rugo or the road pray.
She was the worshiper of a foreign god called Baal, or sometimes people say Baal.
Nida promote prenama da esi thake kunama akucha bethe na da esi chomra kho du pre ko he esi chomra minama a iluna Baal tomne Baal sini ho ko baki.
She hated the God of Israel.
The one promote prenama asi thene da ma ite do Israel chomra ko.
She led Israelites to worship this false god.
The bada mite ena ha thake krimono ko he da thake krimono ha asana a en lovely a no en na ma ite Israel pusi ma jur pusi na da esina akucho beke da esichomre Baal no frego.
She killed many of the prophets of God.
Ena amisa en na ma ite ma biasi jukri preprosi te higa.
Do you remember when Elijah went up into a mountain and had he challenged the false prophets of Baal?
So manasi to mame de ma prepro Ma Elia na ko Elijah na ko he enama the. Did you say he was on a hill?
Yes, he went up into a mountain along the coast, and there was a big contest between Elijah, the prophet of God, and several hundred false prophets of Baal.
Ni da si to ma me he na ko he da ke li sa lo ko kin ko he ma prepro Elijah na ko enama asana I hate who na ma ite kwi mo de pre ko me na ha da de prepro Elijah na ha the to da shoku na ba I he no lo in ne ma da esi primo chomre prepro si te he na ko he lu na da o ma pe chomre pe beautiful si chomre ne ma ite adua thulo na si chomre me na ku ne na pe he pya me lu po ai lu ko si to ma ve ai na.
So imagine how bad this woman was in this church that she would be called by the name of Jezebel.
Me no da me te da pe singi he ma primo pe kwi mo de na me na Jezebel ko he me na ku ne pe me ke da sroku da Thyatira ku no ko da primo de na ha pe te ni me na ko da te su na dunya ba te a mi su e ne ba te da be she kri no a illumina da ma Jezebel ko.
There was at least one of these churches where Yeshua said, if you do not repent, if you do not turn from your evil ways, then I will remove you.
Ni da au te me da sra ku ba te me te singi to mananda be se kri na a hiluna da kira ne sinin da ka se to si mi re ka se to ne ma azena be pya pa ke si pa ai.
But for this church, he warns them in a different way. He said, this Jezebel woman, I will throw her into a bed with her lovers.
Ni da sra de be se kri na ma ai sho da sra ku si ma hilu ko he a hilu na ke ne si o the prayer sinin da re to si te su o shi lu ne ma when you say remove them like
They just don't exist anymore.
Ni da be se kri na be me so si ba me ji ra ke si pa a hilu ne he na da ba sra ku o the me na ko ai sho ai be shi na da is sra ku no ma hina Achiria lu sana hua misag lu to ga hi lu na da promote prina ve pya phag lu ba ve del mat ga lu na da shu ma da kob ku si the ai na ga kob ku ai na ga.
And Yeshua says that in the future, in the great tribulation, in the future, that this woman and her lovers will be destroyed.
Tba da te bia se screen ai show sina da te promote the prayer tma na ko ku si lo please sina matna ke ma da bi hangyer kinema asana da bia se screen ma jira asana mi search lu no lo jira shon ne e pa sana mi na machine ne e na ku si te pa ai no.
So looking at church history, what was happening in this part of church history?
Mina na pe se me ko heda ba pe met ro tho da swaku na so me da ra kinama ite asana ba sha ke ba kinama ite kripusi na kabina krete na pe singi ko hemna kunne na pe me da esi sha ke ba ke da Thyatira sha kinama kripusi na kabina krete.
Remember, what was happening in the church of Thyatira was a picture of what would happen in this, and what did happen in this part of history.
Me te na masana da pe me da sraku te me ko he da sha ke ba te da nga ko se tu da ta nga sa khu na ma pe me da sraku te me ko he da Thyatira aku na me ko da esi sraku si na ma kabino krete pe singe ba ban na ne ma pe singe lop leader esi sraku da rosi ba sha ke ba kina ma kabino krete na ko.
Everyone who goes to school learns about this very important part of history in the Middle Ages.
Me te na ma da lovely u te jo da sraku the ma the Christian jogu si the glona go he ite da lovely si ne ma singi lovely na da Thyatira the sraku adi kya ko.
In this previous part of history, the Catholic Church has come to power. She has come to power because she has linked with the Roman government.
มีเตนมาเด้อเป็นแม่ก็แค่เสดเบอร์สระกุตเมเด้อเพอร์กมอสกุนก็เบียแค่เชื่อแค่นมาปิสิงเนเด้อเอซีคาทเลสระกุนมาอัตแม่ทวาดัวทูเทปแบบมีเตเห็นมาเอซีบันนักเขียนมาอัตกูเบสว่าเกนันเด้อมาอิเตโรเมกลบุซีนก็เฮเอซีนมาสนะอิเตยกูเบสว่าพื้นเนี่ยนั่นมาโรเมเธอทักเกกูมาธรรมดาดูสิเห็นก็
In this part of church history, Yeshua looks down and he sees a church that has become even more powerful, a group of churches that has become even more powerful than before.
มีเตเด้อเบียเชชุกแม่กเล็กเสดแม่ตากเสดมาเชื่อแค่บ่ Thyatira สระกูอุบาคินฮะอเมเธอก็เฮเด้อบันนักเขียนมาสระซีอุบาดารูซิเตเฮสนะเด้อคินมาอามิดูก็ว่ามันคุณมันนะคุณเนี่ยมาอามิดูทุลปุจฮะ
And remember that when Yeshua talks about some bad things happening at that time in history, it doesn't mean that all the churches. There were still many churches that were faithful to God.
มันนั่นเป็นเบตมาก็เฮเด้อบ่เป็นแม่เชื่อแค่บ่เตฟุตบ่เชื่อแค่บ่เตเบก็เฮเกรันเฮเบียสิครีเอชั่นเปเด้อสระกูซีนมาเอซีเตซึดูบัตเตนี่ดาตบัตเตนมาอาเซนาเด้ออเบชัยนาลอปลีสระกูตุก็เฮเด้อเอาเอลเนี่ยเด้อเอซีนี่ดาโตเนี่ยเอาเอว่ามันนะเด้อสระกูเตเฮนะมาเอาเบก็เด้อเตโออันนี้ดาดูปะเปียสิครีเตยเมโมบาดูเบียสิครีมาอูก็
Sometimes this age is called the Dark Ages.
มีเตนมาเด้อเป็นแม่เชื่อแค่บ่นากูง่ายก็เสร็จเด้อแต่ถ้าง่ายสักคนเนี่ยมาพูดแค่มาเอลูมินาเด้อเชื่อแค่บ่แค่มาอาจจะน่าเชื่อแค่อีเตหมอกขี้เชื่อแค่อาขี้อะไรนั่นก็
In this period, the Roman Church, the Catholic Church in Europe, it was so powerful that it ruled in Europe.
มีเตเห็นมาเด้อเป็นแม่เชื่อแค่เด้อง่ายก็เสร็จเด้อแต่ถ้าง่ายสักหัวแค่มาเด้อถ้าแกดูยุโรปกูนก็ให้สิโรเมซินมาโรเมกลถ้าแกกูนมาโอเดอร์มาถ้าแกดูเลอมายุโรปกูนก็ให้เด้อเอซีเตสรกูนมาอาเซนาอามีเปลอปลีจักเยซิก็เซนาอัทวดูครินเนสนาเอซิคุยโมคุยเพจัก
The Catholic Church tried to stamp out anyone who was not teaching Catholic teachings.
มีนั่นเด้อเอเชียโอเดอร์โรเมทักเกกูเนี่ยมาสนะเด้อยุโรปกูทักเกดูเลอยุโรปกูนะมาโรเมเตคาทอลิกสระกูซีนะมาอาซิมีปลีโลเกมีโลเกสระกูซีเด้อไอสวาเซนันเด้อเอเชียคาทอลิกอิสวาตนเตเห็นนะก็
In this period, many believers and also Judapu, were persecuted and put to death.
มีเตเอซีนาคาทอลิกสระกูซีนะฮะสิทอดัวทุนเลยนะฮะไอซีแมทเธอเด้อจูดพูซีเบสนะกูจะเบเด้อจมเร็ดลังงูซีเตเห็นเนี่ยมามีสลบลีสิ
The Catholic Church was so powerful it could do whatever it desired to do.
นี่มีเตเอซีคาทอลิกสระกูนะอามีดูทุนเนี่ยครินเนสจะน่าคุยโมสคุยเพซิจะน่าก็ให้มีนะเอซีซีมีเตมาอันนี้จะก็มีเจมีเบก็
We don't know how many people were killed. Some say many thousands, some say millions.
นี่เด้อเอซีเตเดลลอปลีคริปูซีเซอร์แกซีนมาเอาบัตเตนมาเกซิงเดเพลก็เซนเตทีนมาโอเวเดอตทอกูเวนะเตทีนมาอะฮิโลนะเดตตาอันนั้นคุยใช่ตาเอาอิชลูซิโร
Some tortured. Oh, I'm sorry.
คุยใช่ยาตาตาเตตาเฮซีกูดูลบนะซีกูชักกี้
Oh, the numbers.
yeah
Many were tortured, many were strangled, many were burned to death at the stake.
เตเห็นมาเด้อคริปูซีนมาเตมามี mi sơ lấy lu to khi nào mà mình nằm mi chế nên nhớ lu sẽ nằm mi chế lu có gì thì nào mà cho sơ lu gì thì nào mà ite chữ sơ cho lu đó sơ lu khi sơ lu cho nó có ít thứ lu nó có.
Because the Catholic Church was merged with the government, they could rule. They had incredible power.
Ni mi te ra esi ma Catholic sra ko sinema apa pa te ke na Rome ite tamna du si the na ko he asena khu sa ma cho tu ko asena ami te mi te cho lu no ko sino ha da Rome sra ko sina asena mai te ma mi che cho.
There were men that were translating the Greek scriptures into their native language in Europe.
Which is
Well, they were different languages, but they were putting them in the vernacular, so that the people could read and understand in their own languages.
ni mi te so Greek is the original language of the
Yes.
Bible. Okay.
Of the New Testament.
New Testament. Ma da mi te da li sa a se ku no ma ke lu ke da bia se jukre rata lo please no ma rata na ma Greek language sin go he mi na bana ke da ba sure ke ba ke ku ne be met ha ke no ma esi sa ka bia lo please na da esi roommate language si the no mi te esi phet phet sin no in na go he na esi sa ka bia lo ke ni sa a se ku na da esi language si go.
And the Catholic Church tried to stamp that out.
Tumada esi da Catholic stroku sinema asi ite mi ta tuge ko heda ite esi ilisa sekunama mite asi no pak kanada ki esi lo plisi to ko no komena da Catholic stroku sinwa asi mi ta tuge.
Because many in Europe were seeing the corruption and the false teachings of the Catholic Church.
Mite I don't get it.
Believers were seeing the corruption of the Catholic Church and the false teachings, ones that did not coincide with the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Catholic Church wanted to stop these translations so that people could read the Bible themselves.
Okay. Mite da esi bana ke sure ke na ma da kripusi no ha tu me ite sakabia ba li se a se sina da langora rosi ko he mna bana a ke no ha ki esi ona a chwa da le se se no a singe ko he da li se a se ko ai swana to bana da Catholic stroku ai si swana ma khone ne lu no ko bana ke ki singe the e pu no ha sana Catholic stroku na si che ke ko mi no ha ai si na si meta tu ke da u sakabia ma de li se a se ko no ko